Thank you so much for being
Oh,
aboard the transatlantic. I'm so grateful. And
um,
this is a very good day for me. Thank you, man.
thank you. Thank you for having me. This is exciting.
So as you know, like a transatlantic, we believe that every one of us is an ocean of erratic thoughts and wild feelings. I already can tell, like from your look, that you are like an erratic, like ocean. So I'm
Oh,
very, very excited to cross your ocean today.
well, yeah. I can tell you though, I get motion sick on the ocean. So this should be an interesting ride.
Okay, yeah, let's go through it. Seven questions
Sure.
like the seven C. I'm gonna start from the first one, okay?
Okay.
Okay, 1977, the Sex Pistols play one of punk's most awesome prank on the establishment by showing up via boats to the Queen of England's Silver Jubilee celebration. They serenade the celebrant with God Save the Queen to promote the record, never mind the bollocks. It was a performance act like no other, and a true breakthrough of the status quo. When the police came and forced their way onto the boats, they arrested Malcolm McLaren, the band's manager. Now, I like to think that the Sex Pistols creates this kind of prank on the boats because believe that the water is able to clean everything up, all the shit that we don't want to deal with. Do you remember a time in your career when you choose a specific platform to break through the status quo
Hmm.
and make a loud statement?
Sure. Yeah. It's a great question, and I want to go back and see that performance. But it's a look at I would have to go with like just like the platform of traditional advertising, and
Hmm.
just deciding to go to RGA in 2007. I started. Look at I'm old. I started in like the late '80s, early '90s in advertising, and but at this time, and like this, like the industry was just really starting to change dramatically because of the internet. My dad had sent me this article from the New York Times, and it was about Bob Greenberg, and it was titled "The 30-Second Spot Killer." And I was super curious of what Bob was doing. And my dad put a little post-it on it, and he said, "You should meet this guy." And I was like, "Oh, okay, sure." How does this work? But I just emailed him. So I said, "Oh, okay, I'll just email Bob." And he graciously invited me in. And it was wonderful timing in the fact that he had just made Nick a CCO of the agency, and they were just starting to build a marketing capability, and they wanted to build a team of marketing. And the thing that really fascinated me about this was that this was about like building teams in a new way, and building it around how experiences were being created. And it really fascinated me because it was really building it from the bottom up rather than this top down that really directly conflicted with traditional advertising and how I was raised. I was like raised as like, oh, you come up with a tagline, the simplest, cleanest way of saying something, and then everything flows from there. But this was the exact opposite. This was getting close to the way the product was built, where it was being built. And I loved that. I loved understanding the story of how that worked, and then creating a why should someone care about this product? Really, creating that story from the bottom up there. And look, I had friends in the industry at the time were saying, going like, why would you go work at a production company? Why would you want to go do this? You're really throwing away your career, all this stuff that you've built. And I was getting a little bored even just with advertising and seeing all this pressure of all these other platforms that the internet was just slowly starting to create, and then very quickly creating these very cool places to create and share. So really, that was a time when I just looked at it as a platform and just said, I need to pivot, I need to change. And that was the moment that I took to do it.
That's a great answer, man. And like I have a couple of things that remind me, the spontaneity. that was like back then. I think like when things are not like set up in place and like has to be built, there is a certain kind of spontaneity that comes with it. Like nowadays, like, you know, if you want to like join a team, there's going to be so many layers, so many interviews. But back then I feel like it was more fluid. It was like more like, you know, random. Like, as you say, you just email Bob Greenberg and the guy invites you in. Like, you know, I feel like before the millennium, I don't want to have like the typical like grandpa, you know, look, because there are so many things that's so much better right now. But back then there was a kind of spontaneity, and I'm like as old as you are, I think, because I started like in 1998. I was working at J. Walter Thompson in Rome, and I do remember that even the interview process was much more fluid, less structured, and like very creative. I don't know, maybe it was a different country, maybe it was like Europe, but those were my impression.
No, look, you're absolutely right. I think there's, you know, there was an element of like risk taking that was a little quicker and you know, open to, you know, taking a flyer on something. And look at, that's exactly what Bob did. He just took a flyer on me, and it you know, I'm so happy it worked out, but it also couldn't have worked out. And he would have been, all right, well, let's try it on someone else. But meeting people like that, meeting those, you know, people in the industry that are, you know, fearless to step into something new and try it, are, you know, those are the ones that are just really awesome and, you know, wonderful to just follow and learn from.
Definitely agree, man. Second question. The 6 degrees of freedom are what naval architects call the 6 motion floating vessels make. Ships at sea heave, sway, surge, roll, pitch, and yaw. The first 3 are linear motions, while the other 3 are rotating motions. When I discovered this fact, I pause and smile. I picture a boat caught in a storm and these 6 different ways to move. And I thought that 6 degrees of freedom is the perfect definition that can be applied to advertising. In fact, during a brainstorming session, and it's so funny that we call it brainstorm, we are calling a storm, we are trying to navigate the ocean called brief, and we have a certain degree of freedom. Do you normally go linear, straightforward, that you stay focused on your end goal, or you just rotate into a freaking chaos until you get to the end?
Oh, it's funny. It's funny because you know, I absolutely love chaos. In fact, I actually have gotten a bit addicted to it. You know, nothing feeds the soul more than standing in the center of a pitch room during like the peak of chaos. You know, people are designing and putting things on the wall, and you know, arguing about the brief and stressed about not getting done in time. And you know, but like the energy is fantastic. And then as a leader, what you learn and know is that, you know, that you're in control of that energy, and you have to keep it a positive energy in the center of this chaos, right? And you know, like you know how to flow through that trough of sorrow when you have absolutely nothing and you're like 72 hours out from a meeting, you know. So but yeah, it really is the chaos that, you know, I just you know, like just absolutely love, you know. And you really have to have that ability to, now more than ever, with, you know, we're able to make things on so many different platforms in so many different ways now that we need all sorts of different brains, right? So whether you think of creative technologists coming together with experienced designers, campaign thinkers working with motion artists, social strategists working with content planners, you're all coming around the table at the same time. And it's chaos because all of these brains are wired differently. You know, they're all wired to create differently, and some clash tremendously. But it's at those intersections of the diverse creative minds that we naturally get to that, you know, heightened level of chaos, but those wonderful, beautiful, unexpected creative ideas. You know, the job then of a creative leader or anyone that we're working with is who's going to succeed, is really bring and guide that chaos back to simplicity, right?
Right.
So how do you ride this and bring it back to that one simple element that becomes the idea? And then when it works, there's no better feeling in this job than that.
Yeah, it's true. Whenever I enter a brainstorm session, even with myself, sometimes like you work solo.
Mm.
And it's like the picture that I have in my mind is like to enter a maze. And it's like once you enter the maze, then I'm this kind of like crazy like pinball that like bounce back off the wall everywhere. But then at one point, somehow, the chaos that you think it was so disorganized, it organizes itself and it actually shows you the way. There's something with, I know that I'm getting like too spiritual, but there is something with like, entropy, chaos, and how somehow it lets you find a way. Without that energy that comes from chaos, as you say, it would be impossible to go straight to the solution, because like I think you really need to be disorganized in order like to be simple. That's my take on it.
I think that's
Yeah,
right.
man.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Third question. If we think that computers didn't exist before Apple or Microsoft, we need to rethink again. Now, between 1900 and 1901, researchers discovered a 2,000-year-old computer called Antikythera off the Greek island with the same name. It is the earliest form of a computer seen on the planet. It is an analog computer that was built to serve several purposes. One of those purposes includes predicting the astronomical eclipses and positions of the boats. The inventor of this ingenious instrument was Hipparchus, an astronomer born in Turkey. It is amazing to me to observe how the ocean brings back to life inventions that were hidden. We heard the sentence like, the ocean keeps giving back, keeps giving back. If I were to give you the power to bring back one invention, what would that be?
Invention or inventor, are you saying?
Both invention and inventor.
Sure. Well, I think, from, gosh, there's so many inventors that are just, they become famous because they've invented something and you really are fascinated by their lives. But something that's always fascinated me was Einstein. And, it seems kind of obvious because you go, well, Einstein, he's a genius, so yeah, we should have him back. But it's really his perspective on the universe and how we connect, how we fit into the universe, and how he's truly this, the most creative thinker, really, when it comes down to it. People think of him as a mathematician, but it really is that his way of looking at every day as a miracle, right? Seeing things as like, we think is a reality, but it's just the illusion, a mere illusion of reality. His imagination just is just phenomenal. And, when, he passed, I was always amazed by this statement that he made on his deathbed, really, that the only thing he regretted was that he was just scratching the surface of his potential. And I'm like, oh my God. And that's one of the most inspiring things that you could, come up with.
Yeah, no, you're right. It was a crazy man, right? I mean, sometimes like, you go and you like, I like to read like on Wikipedia, like lives of like, great people. Like, Stein is one of those. And what I like about Stein, I grew up hating math. And really, like, I was not very good at math. But one thing that it was attracting for me when I thought of math, it was like, I think that there is so much fantasy and imagination in the numbers. You had to be completely cuckoo to go and do those kind of calculation. And I think that sometimes there is more imagination in numbers than there are in words. And it's like, I don't know, Einstein was one of those people that even though it was like so scientific, it was so human and so fragile. and so witty.
Yeah.
Like he had a humor, man. It's like he was great. So I
It-
love
yeah.
your answer. Yeah.
Like that humanity in the sciences, I think is something we should never forget, because it's, as science helps explain, but there's a humanity in there that is just, not always, not always can you explain it. So it's yeah, it's a wonderful balance that he struck. you
Yeah.
know the other thing that I would have to mention as well, if you look at Steve Jobs, right? And I think I would what I've always been inspired by was not just his ability around inventing products, but I think really around inventing the stories of why we should care about the products. His impact on what we do for a living is so huge, because he would reach well past what those products could even accomplish or do in its time of being launched, and have us believe in something far further than what it could possibly do.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, he was the one that showed us the why, right? Before the
Yeah.
what's. And then this was like formalized by Simon Sinek. But I mean, like the why, and like why you do that, why you wake up in the morning, and why you actually keep doing what you're doing. And like, yeah, it was an invaluable lesson. I mean, that's another great, like, mind to be inspired by.
Yes.
Fourth question. This is a story made of a transatlantic trip and a harsh question. Bear with me. Returning from Hollywood to Dublin, Richard Burton, the movie star nominated for Academy Awards and BAFTA and Golden Globes, walked into a pub and found his father, an old beat-up miner, reading the paper. The old man looked at Richard and say, "I read that they pay you £1,000 a day." And Richard nodded. His old man does a confused look at his son and say, "What for?" Advertising can be cynical, but one thing is certain. Once you reach a certain level, it's kind of hard to justify your salary in front of those who have a very physical external, like labor and jobs. Did it ever happen to you that someone in your family ask you the harsh question, what do they pay you so much for?
I love that. Yeah, of course. Look at this is a super funny question, very personal to me. You have to understand. I don't know if it's a black sheep of the family, but very, I was the outlier, you could call it, right? So very academic family. My mom and dad are both PhDs, chemical engineering and heat transfer, and my mom in audiology. My brother is a PhD in computer science. My sister is an MD. And they spent years in universities. I spent 4, and that was enough for me. I just wanted to get out, right? And they never outright questioned why I succeeded, or why I made what I made, but they did it in their own way, and they always were a little bit baffled. This separation of education and success, like many times my parents would say things like, "Well, you succeeded because of your charm, or because people like you," or it's like, but you know what? When you come back to what we make, what we create, ideas are valuable. The ideas we come up with, and a great idea is incredibly valuable, and it just making people feel something is valuable. If you go back to even thinking about music or movies, screenwriting, and just like storytelling in advertising, it's like people might not say that this is a hard job, right? But doing it well is remarkably hard.
It is. It's very stressful. Yeah.
You know what? Just creating something that people remember, changing behavior is hard, and to do that is valuable.
Absolutely. And then, like I think that's the harsh part of our job is like there is a constant rejection.
Yes.
You are constantly rejected, like, you know, on a daily basis. Your idea are rejected, your suggestion are rejected, your intuition are rejected, because as a matter of fact, it's a very questionable job. Like creativity is very personal, right? You know, something that it may appeal to you might not appeal to me. There is a line, there is a standard line that say, okay, this is good, this is bad. But other than that, it's literally like, you know, I like this, I don't like this. And so everybody feel entitled to have an opinion, and so to reject yours. And so I think like the harsh part, and I was talking with another guest about this, truly the harsh part of our job is like to be able to capitalize on the rejection and to use the rejection as a springboard rather than something like set you back. So anyway, that's good.
One more point about that I think is really important is that, you know, if you think, because like, again, coming back to, you know, like the cynicism around our industry, and, you know, but if you really think about some of the famous ideas in this industry, right, and what it really helped build, if you think all the way back to VW, to Nike, to Apple, to Coke, even if you think about, you know, there was the Just Do It in Nike, but then there's like Nike Plus, right? So the evolution of the thinking and the ideas there were so important to those brands for having us care about them. I would argue that the people who crafted some of those ideas were drastically underpaid. You know, because some of these, you know, like I remember talking to Jerry Graff, and he was working on Kayak. You know, the brand was sold for, you know, a few $1 billion, I believe. And, you know, they cited the brand's advertising as one of the important pieces that helped create that brand. You know, so
I agree with that. Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. Good, man. Fifth question. The Drunken Boats is a poem written in 1871 by Arthur Rimbaud. Arthur wrote a poem and sent it to Paul Verlaine to introduce himself. Shortly afterwards, he joined Verlaine in Paris, and the duo became a force to be reckoned with. So here we are, the same old story. A young writer sends one of his compositions to an already famous writer in the hope of getting noticed. It seems like a story that takes place in the creative industry in 2021, where thousands of young creatives are desperately trying to find a way to break through the creative directors and the CCO. What advice would you give to a young creative to help them stand out in the crowds and reach someone who's already a name in the industry? You already mentioned that you did that with Bob Greenberg. What can they do in 2021?
You know, look, I think this is the best time to be in this industry. And as much as chaos we're surrounded by, or the, you know, what, like the change that we're going through, never before has it been connected so closely to an individual's passion, right? And what I mean is that, you know, when a young person in this industry can really think about what lights them up, what gets them excited, and then be, you know, what are they pulled to do? And then they can easily find people that they can share that with. When you and I got into this industry, and, you know, communications and advertising, there was just one door, and that was an ad agency. So you really had to find master storytellers. And that's what I started to do at first. You know, the people that I love to connect with, the Fallons and the Brian Buckleys, Cliff Freemans, Eric Silver, David Angelos, and really studying how they told these stories and absorbing that. But the only place we had were ad agencies. But if you think about now, you know, we're able to make so many things on different platforms, that there's so many doors to go into. That's just multiplied, right? So let's say you love music, you can work at Spotify. If you love the outdoors, there's Yeti. Sports, ESPN and Barstool. If you love tech, there's Google and Apple. Movies and entertainment, there's Disney. All of those have amazing brand studios. Asking yourself, what lights me up? What gets me excited? Then start to reach out to those people that you really share those passions with. You know, and let that guide you. It very well might be an ad agency, right? Because there might be something within an ad agency that you're drawn to and really are pulled to telling stories and being part of that community. But if you let those passions guide you, and then just, you know, that you'll be doing the best work of your life. And it's because of this. Really, I honestly believe we're at the cusp of like a new golden age of advertising and creativity. We're at the cusp of it.
It's good to hear, Taras, because I actually believe that we are in a great time, even though it's almost like an oxymoron, right? Like, we are going
Mm.
through a pandemic. We are living like one of the most terrible times in advertising. Somehow there is like the other side of the coin that shines. And there are so many doors around us where you can enter a breakthrough. I think like what I always like to say to like, young talents like in Europe or across the States is like, find that way, find that thing that really you
Mhm.
love to do, and just hammer it, become obsessed to it. Because what I learned personally is like obsession is one of the greatest motivator. And I think that's, as you say, like, like if you can find something that you're obsessed with, then you can find a door, and then you can walk through the door. And I
Yeah.
think that is the very first like thing that like young, like, creative, like whoever like trying to break into the industry could do.
Well,
Good.
yeah, like we start out by just mimicking, right? We start, oh, I love advertising. I love the idea of it. I'd love to work in it. What's the work that I love? And that's how I'm going to start to create. But there's so many other places to do it, and on different platforms. So there's just opening your aperture and looking at where things are created,
Yeah.
and not just looking at what agencies
Yeah.
are there.
Building like your own like career, to me, is not different from like playing Lego. It's
Mm.
truly like, you have one brick, you start with one brick, and then it's all up to you, whatever you want to do it. When I see my daughters play Lego, it's amazing because you don't know, like, where they're going to end up. You don't know like what kind of construction they're going to go, but each single brick is going to actually add, and it's going to eventually develop in something. And when you ask, and when you try to reconnect the dots backwards, and you ask like, so is that what you wanted to build? More often they say, no, that wasn't what I had in mind, but I love it. I love it so much. And I think that's like, people should take a risk on
Yeah.
themselves, because before taking a risk, like, we always ask, like, take a risk on me, take a chance on me. But
Yeah.
I think we should be the one that take a chance on ourselves first. And
Oh,
like, and using that brick by brick, ending up with something that maybe wasn't envisioned in our mind, but he's there now, and like, we end up loving it. So
yeah.
great, man. Sixth question. The Lighthouse in 2019 was a psychological thriller, a very good movie. The story centers around two people who don't understand each other and find themselves guarding a lighthouse on an isolated island off the coast of New England. The symbolism behind the plot is that the lights at the top of the tower represents everything, all knowledge, and in looking into it, the two men can finally understand each other. Now, our creative industry seems to be going through a very uncertain phase. We say that. Nick Lowe, one of your former like co-worker, like and a guest on Transatlantic, believes that agency nowadays are baffled and don't know what to do. So I'm asking you, is there a light on top of the tower that can lead big advertising agency to the future? And if there is, who is shining this light?
Wow. I mean, it's a very, it's a very loaded question you have here.
Yeah, man, that's a loaded kind of question.
No, it's great though. Look at like the drama surrounding the chaos in this industry, because we're all feeling the chaos that's swirling. It's created a bit of a false narrative that like advertising is dying, right? That light is going out, and I just I fundamentally think that that's not true. People might be confused, but that light is shining, and in fact, I think advertising is growing. It's just not growing where it traditionally grew in the past. Where big agencies, holding companies would continue to grow in this traditional structure as it always has. So I would say the light at the top of the tower needs to be have a complete operational overhaul. Okay, so it's how we work together, how we organize teams, how we meet with clients, how we think and make together, how we charge for our ideas. Think about it this way: the industry got really good at telling stories, right? So when it came to when it came to transformation, they believed the story in a way of transformation was enough. So a lot of big companies would preach transformation, and yet the last time the people working within an agency really transformed the way they work together was in 1960, right? With Bill Bernbach. It's really crazy. Departments stay siloed, production stays decoupled. We hand off one group to the next, and then we wonder why agencies have earned the reputation of being slow and expensive. Nick's right that agencies are baffled, right? They don't know why clients don't see them the way they've always seen them, right? And a lot of agencies have become calcified to the definition of what an agency is and does, and they're really holding on to all their might, that not allowing it to change and move. It's if you look back on what made advertising great, people hold on to that, right? And I see on the internet all these posts around, remember when advertising was great? How can we only go back to the way it was? And this like crushingly nostalgic way of looking at the industry. I think this is really one of the only creative fields that has not operationally embraced change. Look at the music industry, film, TV, they operate and function completely differently than they did 5 to 10 years ago. The infrastructure is different. The way they charge for their product is different. How it streams is different. They went through that chaos, but adopted these new ways of doing it. I'm just,
No, I think you are raising a great point, man. This is actually the best possible answer I could have had, because I think it's great. You say we foster change, we foster transformation, we foster risk, but we are the last one to truly transform ourselves. And you say the last transformation we had was in the 60s with Bernbach. You're totally right. I mean, the way we charge the client, the way we approach the work is still the same. And so I think that there is this kind of disconnect. And that's why I think Nick Lowe was referring to the fact that the agency nowadays are baffled because they would like to change, but somehow change is hard. We know that, and transformation is hard, but you gotta do it. And music did it, moving are doing it, but advertising hasn't done it yet. And that's where the disconnect comes from. Yeah.
Look at that. Acting the way a lot of big agencies are acting and preaching transformation, but not really transforming, leads to that inability to take risks and grow. And, and then they become obsessed with self-preservation rather than growth. And in the climate of change that we're in, self-preservation is just like a slow way to bleed out. And it's really a horrible way to live in. Look at clients sense it, but even beyond clients sensing it, the worst people that sense it are the young talent, right? It's we want to draw the best thinkers and makers to this industry, but when they sense this chaos, they don't want to come work in it. So I think, look at that light needs to be this, really that fundamental change of how we create, how we connect, how we work together. And then, we can lead this to something new and exciting.
Absolutely, man. Look, I see the last question is the question that I asked to all my guests. If there was a wind that blew your sail and you had to name it, what would the name be?
Okay, well, two pieces of, two gusts of wind, I would say. One is curiosity. Always been curious. How do things work? Why do they get made that way? Why do we do things a certain way? Questioning myself and curious about the future of how we can work together. And then the appetite to take risks. Always been that, let's go, let's go all in, and and not just doing a slight small little thing, but let's really go for it. I think that's really important for the place we are right now. We all need to be more curious than we've ever been before, and have the appetite to take risks. Because what could be what could be the worst thing that could possibly happen?
I love the appetite to take risk. You know why? Because English language use the word appetite connected to something that is intangible, right? So appetite to take risk means like to be willing to take a lot of risk. If I were to translate this in Italian, the word appetite is only related to food. You have an appetite.
Yeah.
But I found this so fascinating that when you actually use the word appetite for taking risk, because it really shows that you really want to. Like, in fact, I was a big fan of Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction. Like, I mean, I think that was like part of the best title. But anyway, man, look, this was awesome. Your ocean is brilliant, and like your waters are crystal clear. And thank you so much for being on board the Transatlantic. And thanks for giving me the time.
Thank you for having me. This has been wonderful.
Thank you, man. Bye-bye.